fell out of a 3rd-story window, which was a drug and alcohol rehab, where I had literally climbed out with sheets. They tied up sheets and lowered me down the wall. I had a few people's money and I was going out to Cabramatta to get on, right? I didn't come back for 4 or 5 hours later because I got smashed, and I had everybody's money, and I finally got back at like 5 a.m. in the morning, and everyone's asleep. No one's, I'm yelling out, I'm chucking rocks at the windows, and someone comes up and they lower the sheet out to me again, and they're pulling me up this wall. I'm smashed, and right at the last moment.
Welcome to Hope Shot Recovery. I'm Sonia. I'm so excited that you guys are here tonight. I have got a great one for you tonight. He is a recovery creator. You will find him on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and just recently, he is the host of the Kick the Shit podcast. Danny Shannon, thank you so much for joining me tonight, Danny.
Well, thanks so much, Sonia. Yes, all those platforms. And I love, what did you call me? A recovery creator? Was that what you said? Well, yes, I am. Or I try.
Yes, you are. And I'm so glad that you're here. So Danny is going to share his story tonight. So let's just get right into it. Danny, tell me, where did it all begin?
Sonia, before we jump into that, can I say something to you? I want you to know this, right? I'm really excited to be chatting with you again. And I just want to say, like, I don't always feel like that with everyone. Like, I just feel like something about what you're doing. And I'm like, I'm already learning from you before we've even jumped on here. I love that, and I think that, and I imagine other people must feel the same way when they get on board with you. So I just wanted you to know that I'm really excited to be chatting with you. So thank you.
Same. And just so you guys know, Danny and I connected, and we are literally all the way across the world from each other. And yet we have like so much in common. And I think for me, it's like the energy, right? Like we just have this like positive energy. And I think it's just attractive, it's just something when you see somebody that has that, you just want to like connect with them.
So that's exactly what I'm trying to share with you in that. Excited to see, like, there's something about I guess what we're both doing, and also that connection, certainly probably through the the 12-step fellowship, and also I love America, like and Florida particularly. I spent some time doing some recovery over there. It's absolutely incredible. There's so many things about this that just makes me feel really connected. So yeah, you're right. Thank you. All right, so picked up drugs and alcohol and nitric oxide the same day. At about the age of 14, I was at this. My mum and dad moved up to Queensland, which is north of where I live here in Sydney, New South Wales, and they moved up to Queensland to try and have like one last attempt at fixing their relationship. It wasn't for them at all. It was for the kids, for me and my sister. But I had a mate that already lived up there in Bundaberg in Queensland, and he moved up there about a year before, and he was a little bit older than me. And by the time I'd got up there that day when I picked up, he'd already gotten himself into a bit of I guess you'd say trouble, like mixing with a bad crowd, and maybe not a bad crowd, just kids drinking and drugging, and yeah, I spent I'm pretty sure I was up there for maybe a day or two, and we went out to this outdoor roller skating ring, and I think it was closed. We went in there after it was closed, and we got drunk, stoned, and also these things called nangs, the nitric oxide. We call them cream bulbs here back in the day, right? Anyway, and I got smashed, and I remember waking up like on this outdoor roller skating ring, looking around and seeing there's like bodies laying everywhere, broken glass. And I remember just thinking, wow, that was mad. Let's do it again. And I wonder what a normal kid, I wonder if that makes me not a normal kid, because I got a feeling that's kind of where it all started,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you wake up and you see bodies all around you and you're like, yes, let's do it again.
Let's do this again. Yeah, but I know you probably relate to that. Come on, Sonia.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I remember when I was younger, like I just thought that that's what everybody was just supposed to get loaded. I thought that's the way it's supposed to be. And it was fun. And, next thing you know, you're an addict and you can't stop using. So do you think that you were like born an addict?
Yeah, man. I know we're kind of leading into that. Nah, I don't think I was. Okay. So, and I think this is really important. I do share this with people because when I first entered 12-step recovery, I often compared myself to other people a lot. And I don't know, this is how I imagine it now. It's like I felt like in the beginning I didn't belong, because I hear some horrific stories of and big shout out to the thousands of people who I know in recovery, absolutely killing it, who don't sort of have a platform like we have to share their stories. But yeah, like I heard there's some horrific stuff that happened to kids, young people, trauma. I didn't have that. I had this beautiful, loving mum who taught me all my values and morals. And I did have an awesome dad who visited me throughout all my jail stints, but he was a criminal. My dad was like, he taught me everything a kid probably shouldn't know, and mum taught me everything I should know. And I truly believe that I don't know, like that formula was actually a perfect formula for me in recovery, because I've been able to take little bits of both of those and practice it in my recovery, and definitely those values and morals that I got from mum. So look, so to dig deep, my grandma used to be on the Bex powders. Do you remember what Bex powders were? I
No,
wonder if they
please
had them.
tell.
All right, I'll tell you, right? I'm pretty sure they're probably an American thing. But they were just these little powder sachets that you'd have. It was like, say, it was like Panadeine Fort or codeine with paracetamol, and they used to just you open them up and you pour them down your mouth, and that they've been, after time they realized that they were very heavily like codeine based, or maybe even morphine based back in the day. And she used to smash them, I remember. But so, and also my dad's a bit of a gambler, but no, I don't. So for me, I don't reckon it did. I don't think I was born with it. I just think what I know for a fact is the day I picked up drugs at 14, that time, I just didn't stop. I loved it. I just thought, this is for me, So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one thing that you said that I definitely relate with, and I think that maybe, I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people that have struggled with addiction, they feel like they didn't belong. And regardless of what our upbringing was, like we always just felt like we weren't a part of, or we didn't fit in with the society or the norm. So, okay, so tell me what happened, right? So you wake up from this like
Yeah.
party crazy night, and then what?
And then I gradually started smoking pot daily, drinking at least a few times a week. Over the next year or so, I upgraded to magic mushrooms, LSD, amphetamines, cocaine. Like, I want to say all the things a kid does, but it's like this kind of was like that, all the thing. But it wasn't until I was like almost 16 when I picked up heroin. So up until that stage, I tried pretty much everything. And look, stuff, I did get kicked out of school. Stuff wasn't manageable, but I wasn't like a full addict, I don't think. Like, I was smoking pot every day, but again, I feel like every kid smokes pot every day. That's crazy. I know it's not the truth. That's my mentality, But what I do know is when I picked up heroin, if anything had been a problem, it was that day that was the beginning of the end. From that day onwards, I never missed a day of heroin for the next 17 years, or somehow trying to get stoned on opiates, methadone. I was on methadone for a long time. So yeah, that was really the beginning of the end at 16 when I picked up heroin.
Well, let me ask you a question. If this is too much, you
Sure.
don't have to answer. But the
Anything.
first time that you tried heroin, did you shoot it or did you snort it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was at the drug dealer's house. Well, here, let me share this. So I'm sitting at the front of a dealer's house that was going to take us to Cabramatta. Cabramatta is where all the heroin was. All right. So, you haven't heard of Cabramatta?
No.
You probably haven't. In Australia, I think everyone's heard of Cabramatta. There's even documentaries, one called Once Upon a Time in Cabra. But so we're in the car, and this is the day I was going to buy heroin. And I remember thinking this is a really bad idea. And to be honest, I didn't want to do it. But the peer pressure is what led me to do it that day, Now, I did smoke it. I started smoking it for about 4 weeks. And then what happened was in that 4 weeks, we come undone. My mum and my sister found out that I was smoking heroin, and they kind of locked me up. I say locked me up, but they tried to lock me up in the house for a couple of days. And that's when I first experienced my first withdrawal, which wasn't that bad back then because you don't know it, do you? The first time, and I heard other people say this, but I couldn't sleep. I know that, and I felt like I had a cold. But in that time, my mate, my co-offender, my best mate, the guy who used to rob me and I'd rob him, he began shooting up. And I got out of that sort of little lockdown. I seen Brad and I said, come on, let's go. And next thing you know, I'm sitting in this dingy little flat in Cabramatta with the drug dealer Walk injecting me with heroin. And again, like that was another level of destruction that was about to happen for me because I never smoked it ever again after that first time I shot it up.
Same. And that's why I asked you, right? Because the first time that I did it, I snorted it and it was great. And actually, like I even overdosed from snorting
It was
it one
great.
time.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like, let's
Yeah,
just
it was
be
great.
real. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
get addicted because it wasn't fun. It was,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
then like after a few weeks, I'm like, well, maybe it would work better if I shot it, and then I had a friend that did it for me and that was it. I never snorted it again after that. But the
Yeah.
destruction came very quickly after I started shooting it. I
So
mean, it
you
was all that I
snorted
wanted to
it. You
do.
snorted it, eh? Not smoked it. You don't smoke it over there today.
No, and I wonder, like, as I'm listening to you, I just wonder, like, was the quality better back then? Because by the time that I started doing it, I mean, you could smoke it, but you would have to have some really good stuff to be able to smoke it because it was a lot of like cut and, you never
Oh,
knew what you
right.
were getting.
Well, I'm talking late 80s, very early 90s and it was the best quality, I'm sure, of it back then. But just so you know, it's funny because I've only ever once snorted heroin, and it was because I was locked up in a police cell and I had a big stash on me and I was hanging out but I remember even then thinking, I wonder if I've snorted if it's gonna work. Like I never knew you could. I guess I knew you could snort it, but yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
different strokes for different folks, eh?
Well, you can, but it's actually, I think, even more dangerous in a way because you don't get the rush, but you can still overdose from it. So
Oh
in
yeah,
20 minutes, you think you're not feeling it, but it hasn't hit you yet. So you
yeah.
do more. Next thing you know, that's what happened to me, anyways. That's why I wound up overdosing on it.
Sure,
But
sure.
yeah. So tell me, okay. So you started using with the drug dealer, like here, that reminds me of like Philly, right? Like it's just a really rundown place. It's very badly infested with drugs. There's abandoned houses all over the place. Like it's like, the Walking Dead around there and they show videos of it. It's just really bad in Philadelphia. So that's what I'm envisioning in my mind, right?
I
So
I went to Philadelphia. I remember it was so cool. But I'm sorry, because I'm obsessed with America. I remember like those overhead bridges going. There seems to be these things that you walk under a lot. And I went to a couple of NA meetings there, which is always right in the traps.
yep.
And yeah, that was great. I love Philly. But yeah, sure. Yeah. So look, basically like I said at the beginning of my destruction, I was locked up probably within 2 months in a boys' home for starting to write bodgy checks in my name from somebody I was working for. I stole some checks and wrote them in my name. I also had outstanding warrants and back then, if you had $100 warrant, you'd have to spend 1 day in jail for it. So, and I had thousands of dollars. So I spent a couple of weeks in boys' home, juvenile detention, and then by the time I was 18, I was well and truly involved in crime. My life had, my poor family. Like I just put up until then, like I don't know. I guess I was kind of a good kid, but I just turned then, and I can't imagine what it must be like for the loved ones to have your son go through that, And it's one of my biggest passions today is trying to help those loved ones. But yeah, so I was locked up in jail, in adult jail at 18, and then basically I spent the next 10 years mostly in jail, in and out, probably 6 years of that time. I was locked up. I got on methadone program at a young age at 21, because I kept going to jail, and I heard, well, it was true that you wouldn't hang out while you're in jail because I kept getting pinched by the coppers, and then I'd be withdrawing. So I thought, all right, if I get on the methadone, that won't happen. And it's kind of true, sometimes it takes you 1 or 2 days to get your dose when you're locked up, but they would dose you. Do you have
Really?
meth? Yeah, for sure. They bit of, what do you call it? Therapy. They give you a bit of therapy to get you
Wow.
dose. But you have
Yeah.
methadone in jail, don't you?
Well, no. So they don't have methadone in jail unless you're a pregnant woman. If you're a pregnant woman and you're already on methadone, they will continue to give you methadone. But if you
Yeah,
go to
right.
jail, whether you're on methadone, doesn't matter what you're on, you're going to be sweating it out on the floor.
Oh wow, yeah. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
got one state, one of our states here is like that, Queensland actually. But yeah, right. And just say, like, when I say jail and prison, um, to me it's the same one. But I know for you guys, you call it two different things. You got jail and then prison. Is it jail and prison or what?
Yes. So if you get sentenced to less than a year, if you have well, actually, you could even do it on a felony, but if it's less than a year, you go to jail. If it's a
Yeah,
year and a day or more, you go to prison.
yeah,
And
the
it's
penitentiary.
completely different
Yeah,
facilities too.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
prison is better in a lot of ways because you have more freedoms. And in jail, you're like confined in this one cell the entire time. You're not going anywhere else but this little,
Really?
like, 20 by 10 cell or 20 by 40 cell, depending on, how big the cell is. And in prison, you have a lot more mobility. You can get a job, so you could do things within the prison. And
Yeah,
even sometimes you could do work camp stuff. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean, still,
yeah.
neither one's good.
I watch all the American crime shows, so I know those two differences. That's crazy. Um. Anyway, yeah, that was me. And look, this in that time, Tonya, I was a pig. I was honestly just an animal driven by the obsession and compulsion to get and use more drugs. Like there was no limits for me. I did a lot of terrible things. I um I had to get stoned every day, and even on the methadone, for some reason, I still had to get stoned, even though that's meant to do the opposite. Um, and in that time, I would, I committed lots of crimes. I just for the record, don't have any violence in my history, so I've got no violent charges, but pretty much everything else. Yeah, well, mostly I'd be stealing, breaking into factories and ripping off money and selling computers and anything else I could get. I'd steal a lot of cars. I'd be involved in a lot of high speed police pursuits. And we'd also be able to sell some of the cars as well. Just drug related offences. But in that time too, I was living on the streets a lot of the time. My beautiful family tried to support me, but like even I knew that they can't just keep like the shit I would put them through. They can't just keep doing this. I would use dirty needles in the back of the flats in Cabramatta because I was so desperate to get on. I could probably even get my hands on clean needles, but just that obsession to just get it into me. And look, very luckily, I never caught anything. Well, actually, I did get Hep C, and I was very lucky to beat that naturally. And I know these days there's some wonderful treatment for people who do get hepatitis C, but nothing worse than that. Yeah, so it was all shit and it was all good too, because I constantly had this methadone blanket as well. So even though I was chasing, I got into amphetamines in around about 2001, as well. So about halfway into my methadone career, which was 13 years, I started using the ice because the heroin just didn't do anything on the methadone, you know? Like for 1 second it would work. You just get a taste. Yeah, so that's, I mean, long story short.
Yeah, and actually I did methadone for many years too, and it was the same.
Yeah, I
Like
know.
when
Yeah.
I did it so that I wouldn't be dope sick and so that I could do other drugs. So my intentions were never to stop using drugs. And even for like the first several months that I was on it, I would go and buy a bag right after I dosed at the clinic, and then I would go do other drugs for the rest of the day. But eventually like that stopped working, right? Because the methadone builds up and it doesn't work anymore. And it's just like, damn, now I'm
100%.
stuck on methadone.
Well,
Yeah.
there's this little thing, and this is so sad. And just anyone out there, like, this is just rubbish, right? But they told me that I'd have a better quality. Oh, I don't know. A better quality of life. I don't want to say that's rubbish because I guess in some ways that's true. Get on the methadone for 6 months. You have a better quality of life, Danny, and you'll be able to reduce off, and then you'll live happily ever after. That's what they told me.
Yeah, well, I heard
Yeah.
kind of the same story, but what they don't tell you is that yes, you can be on it for 6 months. And if you're not going to use other drugs, your quality of life may be better. But getting off of it is a whole nother story. I was only allowed to go down 5 milligrams every other week, and I was all the way at 180. So you can imagine, like, it took me over a year to get down to 50, and it wasn't working, and I was paying for this shit that wasn't working. And I'm like, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm done with this clinic. I'm not doing it anymore. So I detoxed myself off the methadone with more heroin. And I still went through a awful withdrawal. So it just, for me, it wasn't working, and it didn't work. But my motives were never right in the beginning anyways. So
Nah,
maybe that's
nah,
why.
no way. I just got on it to get stoned, and just 180 is a big drink, so yeah, like that.
Oh, it
Just
was.
if anyone didn't know, like that'd probably kill 3 men who don't use it. That's a big drink. I was on 120 for the majority. I was up at 160 at one stage, but yeah, and of course, like we're addicts, like I would want to go up too. Like the
Mhm.
only reason, and tell me this isn't true. The only reason you don't keep going up is because then you feel like maybe if you do have a big shot of heroin, you definitely won't even get it. It's like it's this weird thing. Like if I go up too much, I'll never be able to feel the opiates. That's the only reason I didn't go up more, is because I
Yeah.
want to drugs more.
Yeah. And you know what I would do? I would
And,
skip like 2 days so that when I went back the third day, I could feel it even better.
shit. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
addicted.
Okay.
It's so
Ok
sick, isn't it? Such a
It
sick.
really was. Yeah,
What
for
the
sure. I'm
fuck?
an addict for sure.
So demented, mate.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, that and look, so what else in that time? In that time, I'll give you a couple of my big stories. I fell out of a third-story window, which was a drug and alcohol rehab, where I had literally climbed out with sheets. They tied up sheets and lowered me down the wall. I had a few people's money, and I was going out to Cabramatta to get on. Right, I didn't come back for 4 or 5 hours later because I got smashed, and I had everybody's money. And I finally got back at like 5 a.m. in the morning, and everyone's asleep. No one's, I'm yelling out, I'm chucking rocks at the windows. And someone comes up and they lower the sheet out to me again, and they're pulling me up this wall. I'm smashed. And right at the last moment, it's like, this is how I envision it. I put my hand out to grab onto the person's hand, and this hand slipped, and I slid down the wall, and I hit the first story windowsill. And I cleared the whole footpath, and I hit the road. And because I was so stoned, right? The drunk tank just around the corner, security guard heard me hit the ground and probably screaming or yelling a bit. And he come over to me, he called the ambulance, and the ambulance officers reckoned if I wasn't so stoned on heroin, I would have broke bones and stuff. But because I was so stoned, I just had a bit of a torn ligament up my leg, basically. So that was, and just that story that was over 25 years ago. That story still goes around that rehab about the bloke that climbed out the window. I'm pretty known to be that guy. There was also an escape from jail in 2001 after scaling a 24-foot fence. I ran through razor wire and swam across
Oh my gosh.
a river bleeding that had sharks in it. We had water police, Polair, which is the helicopter. I had the dog squad, and I managed to get away. I made it all the way to Western Australia.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and lastly, I'll just drop this story too. I don't often share these in podcasts, but anyway, I had a motorbike accident at the front of everything Cabramatta, because I used to spend so much time in Cabramatta, right? I had a motorbike accident at the front of Cabramatta police station, which sent me into a coma. I was stoned on
Oh
heroin.
man.
It sent me into a coma for 3 days. And when I woke up from that coma, I was only 17 at this time, right? When I woke up from that coma, I remember my mom, my girlfriend, my sister, my family all around my bed, right? Listen to this. This is crazy. I swear this is how it happened. And I've been in a coma for 3 days. I'm heroin dependent. All I can hear in the bed beside me, with the curtain drawn, is this lady talking to her husband who's in a coma, and she's telling him that she's going to put $100 into his drawer, for when he comes good to buy stuff. And this is insane. Like I've just come out of a coma. I've got my family here. I can hear money being put in this drawer next to me. I've got a broken femur. I've got
My
staples in my leg. I've got a brain injury. I managed to tell my family to go home. I need some rest. I managed to get my ass up out of that bed, steal the money, go downstairs, get in a taxi and go to Cabramatta again, buy two for 50 out the window of the taxi, bought some smokes and paid for the taxi, got back to the hospital, used the heroin, and by this time my leg was pissing out blood because I busted staples from the
Oh my
carnage of me getting
God.
there, and I buzzed up. And I always say, like, that was the day I realized that I was probably a heroin addict, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I just thought I'd drop those 3 yards.
Yeah, the unmanageability and the lengths that we will go. And you know what? Like, I love those stories because I think I told you about the story where I went out in the hurricane to go get dope. So
Yes.
if we can do that to go
Yeah.
get the next bag, like we could do
Oh, great.
anything for our recovery.
So yeah, they say if you put what 2% of the effort you put into, well, whatever number, 2% of the effort I put into my addiction, into my recovery, I'll stay clean for the rest of my life. Like it's so true. Like I don't know if you want to say 10%, but for me, if I just put 2% of the effort I put into my addiction, I reckon I should be good for another 20 years. I knock on wood because I know this is a daily program, absolutely, but just having a bit of a joke, but so true, isn't it?
It really is true. Okay, so how did it all end? I mean, what made you decide that you wanted to do something different? Obviously, you went through a lot of
Yeah.
pain and suffering to get to that point. So what was it that finally did it for you?
Yeah. So, Sonia, quick, I didn't mention this, but I had over 50 rehabilitation attempts. Like, because I had this beautiful, loving mum, I used to go, like, right from 17, from the age of 17, I went to my first detox, which was a place called Cumberland Hospital, which Wisteria House. It's this hospital out in Parramatta. And then I continued to do that all through my 17 years of the carnage, you know, like I'd check into a rehab, whether it was because I was using too much ice and I needed a break for 3 days, but I was never serious, right? But then finally, on the 15th of September 2009, I had checked into my very last detox, and I often say this was the 50th attempt, you know. And I managed to I took drugs in with me as well, by the way. Like that's something I would always do to detox. You know, like again, just the insanity of addiction. You go to detox to get clean. I don't think I ever had any more intentions of staying clean that time, but so something happened that day. I guess I was lucky enough. I got myself into another program, which was a 28-day program. I should add that I was in that program doing everything wrong. I had a mobile phone. I was doing this little tax rule where you could get $5,000. So I'm doing everything wrong, but I was also started to do some things right. I started writing a gratitude list, 5 things I was grateful for each day, which I was not grateful for anything, but I just started writing these stupid lists, right? And then I started doing a short journal. Like when I say a short journal, guys, this is an incredible tool. 5 things I was grateful for in a short journal, and something I did good today and something I could do better tomorrow. Like that's the way.
Mm.
So it was like 2 paragraphs. Something I did good today, something I could do better tomorrow. And I started doing writing out of their assignment book, which was actually the 12 steps. There were some little assignments that they wanted you to do from the 12 steps around being powerless and unmanageable and things like that. And sure enough, I got through 28 days. And then I went on to another program, a 3 months program, which I actually ended up working for that program afterwards. But and then I was in that next program, and so I'm jumping ahead a bit quick because I want to share this little story. It was Christmas Day 2009. It was I was in the second program. I'm doing 2 meetings a day. I'm in this beautiful, supportive environment, and everyone's going home on a Christmas leave on that day. And to be honest, I didn't really want to go home. The shame and guilt, anyway, I was lucky I was even welcome to come home, but I was invited to come home for Christmas Day, and I felt like I had to go, and I did. I went. I was sitting around the Christmas table, Sonia, with saying 15 family members, friends, neighbors, and I had hurt, stolen, and robbed from every single one of them. The shame was just so sickening. But they don't get it because they're trying to be supportive, yeah. But I left that day and I thought I can't do this. I'm going to get on. I just cannot do this. And like I said, it was Christmas Day 2009. I was at the crossroads. I was at the crossroads. This is the day my life changed forever. All right. To my right, was King's Cross. Have you heard of King's Cross?
Mm.
Nah, that's come on. Anyway, all right, King's Cross is like where all our drugs used to be back in the. If it wasn't Cadbury, you go to King's Cross, right? Well, King's Cross, I know I can get on the cocaine and the heroin, and for some reason, I had this fantasy while being clean that I need coke and heroin. Like I need the big upper and I need the big downer, and I want to mix them together, and then I want to have heroin at the end. Anyway, you know what it's like.
Oh, I know exactly what you
Yeah,
mean.
you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, that was my fantasy, and I thought that's it. I've had enough. I'm going to do it. I'm cashed up. It was Christmas Day. I had money, but on the other side of the road was the bus that took me back to that rehab. And that day, for the first time ever, I actually thought, wow, if I go up there and get on, I'm 60 days clean. If I go up there, I'm going to throw everything away. I knew that. Chances are I would end up back in rehab. I'd done 49 other attempts. I'll probably end up in jail, or I could end up dead, but I did not know. And I'd never tried not getting on, I'd never made a decision to get on and not do it. And that day, somehow, some miracle, I made a different decision for the first time in my life. I didn't pick up that next drug. I went back to rehab, and to be honest, the anxiety and the failure was so strong. Like it felt like I'd thrown it all away. A couple of days went by, and a miracle happened basically that day. I've never come close to picking up a drink or a drug again. And that was like over 13 years, 2 months ago, in early recovery for me. It just lost the obsession and compulsion to drink and to use drugs. It was gone. I haven't even come close on it. And again, I'll knock on wood. I've been through hell. I've wanted to take my life. I've wanted to walk in front of buses. I've wanted to jump off the balcony, but I never really, and I just thought I'm not going to use again. And it's just left me. Sorry, that was a big
Wow.
mouthful. Yeah, but that's pretty cool, eh?
That is really amazing. And I think there's so much hope in that, right? Because people that
Yeah.
first quit using, they're like, the obsession is never going to go away. And they're always thinking about it. I went through that really bad when I was, and I'm glad I was locked up, because if I wasn't locked up, I don't know that I would have made it, because I was
Yeah.
constantly thinking about what all my friends were doing out there, what kind of drugs I could get, how I was going to use them. It was like the lifestyle, the drugs, it was all of it, So having the obsession removed it's a miracle, and never having that come back. I mean, that's the miracle of recovery, and that's the hope shot. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Isn't it? Yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, even like I've been through some really challenging times, and And look, there's only one reason why that is, but okay, like it's not as if it just got taken away. I've worked my ass off, Sonia. Like I continue to work my ass off like every single day, practicing all the things that I've learned, in my 12-step recovery and all the things I learned in those early days, plus 100 other things that I've implemented into my life ever since. But yeah, like it's not as if some fantasy bullshit and it was just taken away. Like I said, I have worked hard, but it's true. Like I haven't come close to picking up a drink or a drug again, which is an absolute miracle,
Yeah, that is a miracle. So, okay, so you're in the rehab, right? You go back to the rehab. So tell
Yeah.
me, what did it look like in your early recovery? Like, when
Oh,
did you
yeah.
finish the rehab? Like, how
Yeah.
did you go to a halfway house? Do they have
Yeah.
halfway houses there? Tell
Yeah.
me all
Yeah.
of those things.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, rehab was like morning group, chores, some kind of activity, and then go to a lunchtime meeting, come back, maybe do some counseling. Oh my god, rehab was a chore. And then it was dinner, then it was go to another meeting. It was like full on, right? But anyway,
Yep.
I was immersed in the 12-step fellowship big time at that time, and I was doing 2 meetings a day. I finished that program after 3 months. And then I went to a halfway house, which actually I lived in for the next 4 years. I milked the system hard in my early days of recovery. All right, so I went to a place for 2 years where I continued to do my 12-step recovery. I went to meetings every day. I started working at about 6 months clean, 1 day a week. I did everything suggested, so I swear to God, like everything they said. So I started working 1 day a week because for me, I needed to focus on my recovery. That was number one. And then I increased that 1 day a week to 2 days, to 3 days, to 4 days, till I got to a point where I was working 7 days a week. But I did a meeting every single day. Every single day, you'd find my ass even falling asleep at a meeting because I was just so desperate to keep my recovery. I did that for about 18 months, and then I thought, you know what? I was working really hard. I was on my feet all day. I forgot to tell you, one of my injuries, I cut my Achilles tendon in
Oh
half. It
my
sprung up my leg,
gosh.
right? But because of that, I can't stand for long periods of time. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I could go and study and help people like in drug and alcohol. And I'll tell you what, before that, before 18 months clean, I didn't want to help anybody. I was so selfish and self-obsessed. I don't know how people just get clean and want to give back. Like that's the last thing I wanted to do. And I started studying. I and sure enough, I was at TAFE for like 6 months, and I landed a job in the rehab that I went through, which was an absolute miracle because the manager said to me when I started studying, she said, Danny, because I was really shifty in my early days of recovery too. I was always under the radar. I was always doing something wrong. Even though I did all the good stuff, I did lots of bad stuff too. Anyway, she said, Danny, you'll never work here. And sure enough, I got the phone call saying, would you like to come and do a shift, Um, and I just want to say the reason that is because I just always showed up, regardless. And this is such an important message for people, or for me. I did lots of things wrong. I got into short-term relationships with people where like stuff that would make you want to hide, but I just never hid. I never hid. I always put my I always turned up, I always fronted up, and sure enough, doing that for 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 months starts people would forget and what you've done, and you
Mhm.
kind of like you get forgiven because at the end of the day, like I was just an addict in early recovery. And when I say the relationship stuff, there's a whole bunch of things. Through my relapses, I'd stolen money off other members. I'd done people didn't really want to know me in those early days that much, um, but yeah, I just kept fronting up and anyway, sorry. So I started studying, I got a job there, and then the next 10 years I worked in drug and alcohol rehabilitation. I built myself an amazing career. I traveled the world. I bought a house. Um, I had a beautiful 5-year-old daughter who I have now. I've got this incredible relationship with my 21 year old son. Mate, I've had the journey of a lifetime. So like the most incredible journey ever. There's nothing in my life like I can't want for anything else really, you know?
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
so amazing. I
Yeah,
love that. And
thank
it's
you.
so inspiring. I mean, just from like what happened at the rehab and then being able to go back there and give back and be of service and start a career with it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really cool. And I really appreciate your story so much. And, one thing that you said, like when you went to the halfway house and you went to meetings every day and you put your recovery first, like you built a solid foundation, right? And that's really important. And I related to a lot of things you said because I took all the suggestions. Like, even if I didn't do them for the long term, everything that they told me to do, I did,
Yes.
because they said if I wanted what they had, I had to do these things,
Yes.
right? And I
Yes.
did
Yes.
all the things. And it
Yes.
really served me well because I built a foundation. And that's so important. So I just wanted to say, like, showing up, you talk about showing up. That's so important. Like, keep showing up and keep showing up. And you know what? Sometimes we have problems with people. I mean, people aren't perfect, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
we keep showing up and it all eventually just becomes water under the bridge. And at the end of the day, we just want to help each other stay clean. So, okay, one more thing. So
Sure
tell us
thing.
about your encapsulator. I want to touch on that
Oh
for a
yeah,
minute.
thank you. Okay, so working at that rehab, I celebrated 6 years clean, let's say back in 2016, which I think is right. Um, I was my milestone day. I was full of gratitude. I'm sitting at my desk on the opposite side of where I was once a client, mind you. Right? So really surreal. It's like feeling on top of the world. Um, and I thought to myself, I wonder what I was like when I entered those doors back in 2009. Like, what was I thinking? How was I feeling? And I thought, even though I often talk about the early days of recovery, I couldn't really connect with what it actually felt like. And I came up with this idea, this concept to record a video to my future self for my 10-year milestone, which was very ambitious at the time. I get it because I've just turned 6, but um, and anyway, and I thought that'd be so cool. And that's what I did. I did a little bit of research on some questions that I could answer on camera. I started the camera rolling, and immediately as I started answering these questions, like on a piece of paper, like what is today's day? Well, and what's your name? And I've read that out. And then what are my goals for the future? And I just noticed this really it was really weird me talking to the future me. It was very therapeutic, and I also one of the questions was tell me about your loved ones, and I thought I got quite teary and emotional because I thought I hope I'm still alive for one thing because I'd lost so many people dead to heroin overdose in my time up until that point, and I also thought I hope my relationship with my son is good because I was working pretty hard on that. My daughter didn't even exist at the time, which is absolutely incredible because I watched that video 4 years later and my daughter was alive. Like she didn't even exist at that time. And a whole bunch of other things. My mum, my dad. And I thought this would be an incredible tool to be able to give to the clients coming through our program, giving them an opportunity to capture the essence of who they are today and send this message of love and hope to their future self. And Tanya, I should just mention I did America in 2017, and I drove in an RV from LA to New York via Florida, and I immersed myself in the 12-step fellowships, and I met all these crazy entrepreneur legends in America who inspired me to come home um, to Australia and start and turn that concept into Encapsulator. So, Encapsulator was born. We provide time capsule video programs allowing individuals like you and I to record video messages of love and hope to their future self. You respond to some on-screen prompt questions, which allows you to create the best video possible. It helps you to guide it along the way, and you can identify your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your future aspirations, and then these videos get locked away into our secure time locked vault waiting to be discovered at a date that you choose in the future. That's Encapsulator.
That is so cool. And if you guys want to try out the encapsulator, I'm going to put the link to the website in the description.
Thank
I'm
you.
also going to put the link to all of Danny's socials in there, to the podcast. I mean, go and follow him everywhere. Thank you so much for telling your story tonight. That was awesome. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again soon.
Thanks so much, Sonia.